All right, folks, let's continue on in our muscles list. First things first, we want to make sure we're focusing on muscles of the chest, the shoulder girdle, and the arm. Remember, the muscles in bold, you need to know the origin. Write that here. You need to know the origin, insertion, the action or function, and the location of those particular muscles. So not a lot you have to know all the details of, but there's a lot you have to know the location of. With everything not in bold, you need to be able to locate. And that's where kind of the difficulty starts coming with muscles, because some of them are going to be deep, whereas others are superficial. So it's easier for folks to remember the superficial ones, but don't forget the deep ones as well, because again, you need to know the location of both. Now, the first we're going to focus on is the deltoid. So we see I have it kind of circled around here on the actual cadaver. And the deltoid is so named because it's coming from the word delta, which means triangle. Okay? And so even on here, you'll see it kind of has like this triangle shape. Is it perfect? No. But it kind of has a triangle shape. Now let's talk about the origin, because this is going to be bold. So we need to make sure we know the origin, insertion, the function, and or action. They're both interchangeable here. And the location. So as far as the origin, we see it's definitely going to be on the clavicle here. And not only is it on the clavicle, it does have an origin that's on the spine of the scapula and also the acromion, okay, which is that bony projection. Now, as far as insertion, it's going to be, so I'll put an O for origin here. As far as insertion, that's going to be the humerus. Now, it's going to be on the tuberosity of the humerus, but it's going to be on the humerus nonetheless. Now, what is the overall action? So we have this and this. Now let's get into the action. Well, the deltoid muscle is going to allow the arm to extend and also abduct and also medially rotate. So if we're thinking of medial rotation, think of doing a power stroke when you're swimming. You're medially rotating. So you're rotating towards the actual middle, right? Every time you do one of those power strokes. Now let's get into some more detail of this. Now our deltoid. Now I kind of want to write a little box out again that has the origin, insertion, action, which also means function here, and location. So location is going to be the rounded shoulder cap. So we call the deltoid the shoulder cap because it's like this rounded shoulder cap that you see here. Okay. Now again, the origin is going to be the clavicle. If you want to get specific, it's the lateral third of the clavicle and the acromion and also the spine of the scapula. Now, when we're talking about the insertion here, going to be our origin, then that means it's going to be the tuberosity of the humerus. They call it the deltoid tuberosity because this is where, again, it's going to have that particular tendon attached. Okay? What's its function? Well, it's a prime mover of the arm. So now we're adding in more details. You can just say, okay, it's going to extend, abduct, immediately rotate the arm. Or you can say it's a prime mover of the arm, mainly for abduction away from the midline. Okay? It's going to assist with flexion. It's going to help with extension and rotation. Every action except doing what? Adduction. Not going to help with adduction at all. Okay, and again, the location is the rounded shoulder cap. So even with the visuals you see in your textbook, this is great enough to be able to move forward. So let's go ahead and move forward. So we did our deltoid. Now we're going to focus on the latissimus dorsi, the rhomboids, the infraspinatus, the supraspinatus, the teres major, and the teres minor. Again, the only one we need to know the origin, right up here, insertion, action slash function, and location of is the latissimus dorsi. Everything else, we definitely need to know the location. So we definitely need to move to another app to make it, to be able to see this. Why? Because when it comes to like the deltoid that we just saw, it's very easy to even feel. You can feel your shoulder cap. You can feel your deltoid muscle. They're superficial. But when we start getting details and more details, it's going to be hard. I mean, even look at the actual cadaver here. We have the infraspinatus, we have the teres minor, we have the rhomboid major, we have the supraspinatus, and the rhomboid minor. And it all kind of looks like, okay, little pieces, but we want to make sure we can call those out even better. Okay? So again, we're going to focus on latissimus dorsi, which again is a huge muscle in the back. We're going to focus on the teres major, teres minor, so one is larger than the other, infraspinatus, and of course the supraspinatus for now. Okay? Now, guess what's so cool about this? Remember we were talking about fixator muscles that's there to help stabilize movement, like when we were bending our elbows? Well, guess what? We also said there are some rotator cuffs was our example. And we said it's a group of muscles. How we get to see those group of muscles? So, for example, we're going to have our subscapularis, which is a rotator cuff muscle, which we'll see later. The teres minor is a rotator cuff muscle. The teres major, therefore, is also going to be rotator cuff muscle. We also have our supraspinatus is a rotator cuff muscle, and infraspinatus is going to be a rotator cuff muscle. So that's a group of muscles we were talking about before. Now the rhomboids, yes, they are diamond shaped, according to their name, but these are going to be retractor muscles. Okay? So I put retractor up here because I had to like change the position. All right, let's go ahead and get into locations, because sometimes it's going to be easier to learn locations because remember, majority of these we have to know the location of, whereas the only one we need to know more details about is going to be the latissimus dorsi. So latissimus dorsi. So let's go ahead and get into location. First, let's talk about the retractor muscles, which are going to be our rhomboids here. As you can see, you only have rhomboids on their list. So that's minor and major together. And these are going to be between the spine and the inner scapula. So you can see our rhomboid here, major and minor. They're going to be between our scapula and our spine. There you go. Now let's go ahead and look at infraspinatus and our supraspinatus. So again, super means going to be above, okay? And infra, like think of inferior, is going to be below. And the spinatus is talking about the spine of the scapula here. So the muscle above the spine of the scapula is going to be the supraspinatus. The one below it is going to be the infraspinatus. These are a little bit easier to recognize because, again, that infraspinatus is going to be going from that humerus all the way to where we have the lateral edge of the scapula. So it is a little bit larger. And you can see it over here in the cadaver. We're going to have our, again, we're going to call out the infraspinatus here. There you go. And that means the supraspinatus has to be above it. And here's the spine of the scapula. Think about the latissimus dorsi. Latissimus dorsi, as you can see, is very wide. So it is going to be like the broad lower back flank. This whole thing is going to be the latissimus dorsi. Okay? Pretty large here. Again, an easier one to be able to recognize. Now we saw the supraspinatus, the infraspinatus, the rhomboids, and the latissimus dorsi. Let's look at the teres minor and major. So here's the teres major here, and then here's the teres minor, really small in between. So let me go ahead and highlight the teres minor here. And then I'll also highlight the teres major. So you see, yes, they're near the infraspinatus. But if this is the infraspinatus right here, that means the teres minor is going to be inferior to the infraspinatus, okay? But it is superior to the teres major. So we want to make sure that we're getting those details in because, again, we have to know the locations of these. Also, we need to remember that some of these are superficial muscles and some of them are going to be deep muscles. So we'll go into details of that in the act. Now, also, we have looked at the location of the teres minor and major, the supraspinatus and the infraspinatus, and the rhomboids, and of course, latissimus dorsi. But we have to get more details about the latissimus dorsi because it is bony. So now let's go ahead and see what these muscles look like in another view. So, all right, this view is going to help us figure out whether or not we have muscles that are going to be superficial or deep. So as you can see, this is somebody who's going to be posterior, the back of them. And we have our first layer, which is good old skin. Now let's get into our second layer. In the second layer, yes, you can see the trapezius, you can see the deltoid here, and you can see the latissimus dorsi here. What else can you see? You can see the teres major here. So we know the trapezius, the deltoid, the latissimus dorsi, and the teres major are going to be considered superficial muscles. Okay? You can literally go behind your arm here and feel that teres major. Now let's go ahead and probably take off the trapezius muscle to be able to see the rhomboid major. So I can see the rhomboid major, kind of a piece of it here. And if I want to see that rhomboid or that diamond shape, I have to be able to go underneath that trapezius. Go deeper, you'll see I've taken some of that deltoid off and also the trapezius muscle. Now I can see that diamond shape, rhomboid major, and of course a smaller rhomboid minor above it. Just consider this whole piece as the rhomboid. Major and minor, but for us, we're going to take this whole thing as the rhomboid. See, well, if we know this is the teres major, and it's going to be superior to the teres minor, okay? So we definitely see that teres minor right here. So once we remove that deltoid and that trapezius muscle, we're able to see all the muscles underneath it. Again, teres major was superficial, teres minor here is now being shown, and now I can see the huge infraspinatus here as well. Because why? That teres minor is inferior to the infraspinatus. So there you go. Okay, and if I know where the infraspinatus is, then I can definitely know where the supraspinatus is. How do I know that? Well, I need to look at the actual spine of the scapula. So below the spine will be where the infraspinatus is, and above it will be the supraspinatus. In order to do that, I have to go deeper. So again, teres major, rhomboid, we have our latissimus dorsi here, teres minor, and infraspinatus right there. I know the supraspinatus is here somewhere, but I can't see the whole thing. I see my scapular spine, but I need to go another layer deeper to see the whole thing. I've taken off the teres minor and the infraspinatus so I can see the supraspinatus. Here's our spine, and here's that supraspinatus here going through, and it's way better and more visible. So the superficial muscles are going to be, again, our latissimus dorsi and our teres major. Okay. What are going to be the muscles that are deep beyond that? Again, it's going to be our teres minor and our infraspinatus. And then we have to go another layer deep to see our supraspinatus, which is what we see here. Get more details about the latissimus dorsi. Again, we have to know the origin, the insertion, the action or function, and the location of this muscle. So we definitely know the location. Okay, it's going to be the large lower back muscle. And the origin is going to be the spinous processes from T7 to L5. So thoracic 7 to lumbar 5. So yes, it's pretty big. So we're looking here all the way down to the lumbar area here. Okay. It also has origins. So that's the origin. This is the origin on the iliac crest here. So that's another origin. And the lower 3 to 4 ribs. So these ribs here also have an origin for latissimus dorsi. And that origin is what? Going to be stable so that we can have the insertion do what? Go ahead and do the movement or contract by getting closer to the origin. Excuse me. That insertion is going to be on the humerus. So we know it's going to be on the humerus, but as you can see, it's going to be in the intertubercular side. So there is a tubercle that's going to be near there, which is by the groove of the humerus there, and that's where you're going to have your latissimus dorsi. Go ahead and have an insertion. I'll give you another view. So here's this huge back muscle, our latissimus dorsi. As you can see, the origin there at the lower ribs here. The lower 3 to 4 ribs, we have it along our thoracic and to our lumbar spine. And we have the insertion that's going to be up here where the humerus is. Okay? Not near the head of the humerus, which would be here. It's a little bit lower. So you have the head, then you have the neck. And right below the neck will be that intertubercular sulcus there, or little groove. Okay? You're trying to remember this in your own exam. You want to make sure you can, of course, have things in your own words, but be able to locate these particular muscles and, of course, give details when necessary. So here, if I'm thinking of the origin, I'm like, okay, I know it's going to be T7L5, iliac crest, lower 3 to 4 ribs. Okay? Next, insertion, I know it's going to be on the humerus for sure. It's going to be in the medial side of the humerus. Sometimes you might not remember intertubercular groove, and depending on the professor, for me, that would be fine on the lecture exam. Ask your lab professor, that would be fine for the lab exam. Okay? And what is the action of latissimus dorsi? Well, it's going to help with shoulder extension, shoulder adduction, internal rotation of the shoulder, and it's going to pull the body upward during climbing. Let's get an example of it. So this is going to be an example of the latissimus dorsi helping with the extension of the arm. Okay, so extending back, you see latissimus dorsi is being contracted, going closer to the origin. Now let's see the adduction of the arm, getting closer to the midline. Again, you see it contracting. Now let's look at medial rotation of the arm. So this is going to be that anterior view. And you see the latissimus dorsi. This is a better view of where it's going to be, again, the head of the humerus. You have the surgical neck, and then right below will be that groove for the attachment of this latissimus dorsi. Let's go ahead and see this move. See how it contracts by allowing it to go medial rotation towards the inside of the axle or towards the midline of the body. There you go, folks. So a lot of different actions. You have to remember every single one. For my exam, at least know 1 or 2. That's going to help you remember this stuff. For the lab exam, of course, ask the lab professor. Please ask the lab professor. Let's continue on. Got a lot more muscles to go through. So we're still about the chest, the shoulder girdle, and the arm. Now we're going to focus on the pectoralis minor, subscapularis, which we know is a part of the rotator cuff, the biceps brachii, and the serratus anterior, the brachialis, the brachioradialis, and the pectoralis major, the triceps brachii, and of course you see that brachioradialis is seen twice, so we're only going to focus on it once. Using some of the textbook visuals, using the textbook's visuals, that's what I'm trying to say, I'm tripping today. Go ahead and let's identify where some of these muscles are. So we have the pectoralis major, we're going to have the pectoralis minor here, we're going to have the serratus anterior here, of course this is going to be the anterior view. And we're also going to have the subscapularis here as well. Okay? Next, we're going to have the biceps brachii, the triceps brachii, back here a little bit, the brachioradialis, and also the brachialis. So remember, we talked about the biceps brachii and brachialis both helping to flex the elbow. They're synergists, right? And then we talked about the triceps brachii, that's going to be there to relax, to make sure we're stabilizing that movement, along with our rotator cuff muscles and our fixed gauges, okay? So just keep those details in mind as well. Let's go ahead and look at each of these so that we can, of course, focus on the actual location, because we know some of them are going to be deep and some are going to be superficial. And then we'll get into the pectoralis major, the biceps brachii, and triceps brachii as far as more detail goes to understand the origin, insertion, action/function, or the location. Starting off with the skin. Now we took the layer of skin out. Now let's look at the superficial muscles. So what do we see here? We're going to see our pectoralis major. We're also going to see our deltoid muscle, which we're not focused on anyway. Let's focus on the pectoralis major, as you can see here. Now, I also can see my biceps brachii here, but I can't see the ends, meaning I can't see the origin. I probably can't see the insertion until I take away my pectoralis major and my deltoid. Let me also show you the deltoid here. We're not focusing on it, but I want to show you that once we take these off, we kind of create another layer here. Now it's going to be easier to see our pectoralis, well, not our pectoralis major, but to see our brachii here. Let me do that. All right. Now we can see our biceps brachii, and now you can see the actual organs here, and of course the insertions down here. So that's going to be our biceps brachii. Again, superficial, but if you're talking about the entire muscle, we do have some that are a little bit deep or underneath that pectoralis major and deltoid muscle. So we do consider it superficial, so we can see it here. So it is considered superficial. Another thing is going to be the serratus anterior, posterior view, and from this second layer, being peeled off, we're able to see again the full biceps brachii, but also we can now see the pectoralis minor. Okay, so that's that pectoralis minor. What else can we see? Continue to go deeper and try to see the brachialis. So the brachialis is here. You'll see the biceps brachii is superior to it, and the brachialis is right there. So we can see some of the brachialis that you may be feeling on your forearm, but you can't see the whole thing until you go underneath the biceps brachii. Another thing to see at this view is going to be the serratus anterior. So again, looks like kind of a jagged edge. That's where it gets its name serrated. And again, as you can see, it's definitely connecting to those ribs as well. We're looking at the upper arm, but when we go to the forearm and we think of the biceps brachii and the brachialis, things look a little bit different. So for example, the biceps brachii is going down into the forearm, but it doesn't go all the way down and extend to the forearm. The brachialis, though, again, it's going to be right underneath it, going to that biceps brachii. There we go. Right underneath it. Got a layer, take another layer off. Layer with the biceps brachii, sort of the insertion point. Brachialis, again, is going to be underneath. We can view as a subscapularis. Okay, so it's going to be below the scapula there. And as you can see, here's that subscapularis. We have our serratus anterior. We're going to have, again, our biceps brachii and our brachialis. Show the posterior view so we can clearly see our triceps brachii. Here's our triceps brachii. As you can see, it even goes underneath where we have the infraspinatus as well for different organs. So again, when we're flexing the elbow, this triceps brachii is going to be relaxed. I also want to show you the posterior view here of the muscles acting in the forearm, specifically the biceps brachii. So we see the biceps brachii here. We see the brachialis, but as we go into the forearm, that's where we get into the brachioradialis. So brachial means it's going to be up on the upper arm area, and then radialis means that, again, that's going to be going through. The insertion is going to be through the radialis. So brachioradialis, it means the origin is brachial, radialis is the insertion. That makes it easier to be able to know where it is. Okay? Ready? That's a lot of muscles. That's a lot of location details, and we haven't even gotten to the full details of the muscles that are bolded. So let's go ahead and review. Superficially, yes, you can see the pectoralis major. Yes, you can see the biceps brachii, right? Can you see a little bit of the brachialis? Sure, but it's not going to be as much, so you need to go ahead and go deeper. And so that means every time you're taking a layer off, you're going deeper. And so when you get deeper, it's easier to see the triceps brachii. It's easier to see the pectoralis minor, which you see right here. It's easy to see the subscapularis right behind there, and the serratus anterior as well. Okay, but you're going to have to keep going a little bit deeper to see those details. Now, as far as the triceps, you have to look from a posterior view, and you'll be able to see the three heads, the lateral head, the long head as well. That's going to be the origin area of the triceps, and then, of course, going down to the insertion area of the triceps. Brachioradialis is going to be from the brachial upper arm down to the radius. The brachialis, again, is underneath that bicep brachii as well. So what I would do if I were in school, I would kind of think about looking at the model and remembering the top layer, the superficial layer, is going to be the biceps brachii. You can't see the whole entire extension because you need to move the pectoralis major and the deltoid to do that. but you know you can actually just feel it on your own. Okay. Now underneath that is where, and on the sides a little bit, is going to be that brachialis muscle. If you're going from the upper arm down, you're going to feel that brachioradialis muscle. And then if you just move and feel behind your actual arm, upper arm, that's when you can feel the triceps brachii muscle. Okay. Now pectoral muscles, again, it's a larger muscle, so it's easier to feel. But if you want to be able to see or feel the pectoralis muscle, you have to go underneath the pec and the deltoid, which of course we're not going to be able to do. And again, if you want to see the serratus anterior muscle, you need to kind of move away the pectoralis muscle and the deltoid muscle and some of the view of like your biceps brachii for some views to be able to see that serrated version against the ribs. Okay, folks? Now let's go ahead and get into details about latissimus dorsi. Not latissimus dorsi, I'm tripping. Of the pectoralis major muscle. I also want to talk about the serratus anterior because we have been talking about that a little bit, but you don't have to remember that. Okay, you just got to know the location. Now, pectoralis major. Okay, major means it's going to be a larger muscle, so it has to have a minor that goes with it as well. And the pectoralis is telling us kind of, okay, it's going to be in the pec region, meaning the chest wall. So we're talking about location of the pectoralis major and minor, we're thinking of the chest wall. Okay, serratus anterior, we're thinking the lateral chest wall. So again, here's our serratus anterior. You see that jaggedness or serratedness attaching to those ribs. Now, the pectoralis major is going to have an origin. You can see here that's going to be in medial half of the clavicle. So we have an origin here, medial half of the clavicle. Sorry, I'm on the deltoid. The medial half of the clavicle here. So that's the origin. The anterior sternum. That's some origins here. And the cartilage of ribs 1 through 6 and sometimes 1 through 7. So all that cartilage that you see here, you are going to have origin for that pectoralis major muscle. Now the insertion, again, that lateral piece of the humerus. So we're going to have the insertions around here, lateral piece of the humerus. And remember, the goal is to do what? Be able to go towards the origin for contraction. So that means shoulder flexion, internal rotation of the shoulder, and also shoulder adduction. Okay, going away from the midline. Going back in, going away from the midline, going back in. So let's go ahead and get some flexion of the arm at the shoulder joint, of course, for the pectoralis major here. Okay, the insertion is getting closer to the origin there. Let's see adduction. Toward the midline. You also see that ability. And let's see medial rotation. I'm moving my shoulder medially or inward. And yes, that's going to be the pectoralis major that can do that as well. So for the pectoralis major and latissimus dorsi and the deltoid so far, you have to know the origin, the insertion, action or function, and the location. I have some details about the serratus anterior, just to show you that it does help protract the scapula and hold it against the chest wall. It does help rotate the scapula upward, and it is on the lateral chest wall. Just extra detail, okay? That's not one of them that's bolded. Now let's move on to the other two that are bolded, which is going to be the triceps brachii and the biceps brachii. So first, we got to figure out where our triceps are and figure out where our biceps are. Again, the triceps brachii are going to have 2 or 3 heads, right? They're going to have a long head, they're going to have a lateral head, and a medial head. So the long head is going to have an origin right there in the tubercle of the humerus. So the long head is going to be having an origin in the tubercle of the humerus. So that's another origin. The lateral medial heads are the posterior humerus. So again, we're going to have more origins over here. And what is going to be our insertion? The olecranon of the olecranon process of the olum. So we're going to be towards here, and we're going to have our insertion. So the goal is that, again, the insertion is going towards the origin, and that'll help us understand that the triceps brachii are the posterior upper arm. Okay, posterior upper arm. And I'll show you the posterior version versus the anterior version we're seeing here. Now, let's think of biceps brachii. Again, they're going to have 2 heads. One is going to be the short head area, and that's going to come from the coracoid process. Basically means like that little beak-shaped bone at the top front of the scapula. So for, again, our biceps brachii, one of the heads is going to be the top front of the scapula here. Okay? And then the longer head is going to be, again, a tubercle on the actual humerus. We have another head around it. Now, of course, the insertion area is going to be the radial tuberosity. So we have the insertion for the biceps brachii down here. And we also have it near some aponeuroses as well, meaning sheets of connective tissue. All right. I'll write the insertion better in a thicker line. Okay. So what does the biceps brachii do? Elbow flexion, which we know is one of the prime movers there. Forearm supination, so supine versus pronation. Remember those details. Palms up, palms down. Shoulder flexion, and where's it located? The anterior upper arm. So the triceps brachii is a posterior upper arm. The biceps are in front of it. It's in the anterior upper. Let's go ahead and look at some details of this movement. All right, here we see the biceps brachii. We can see again the short head is going to be near that coracoid process, which is going to be that kind of beak-shaped process from the scapula. And then we have the longer head, which is going to be, again, a part of that supraglenoid tubercle, which is going to be on the humerus. So remember, the glenoid cavity, which is going to be our shoulder girdle attaching to the humerus, we're going to have a connection with our biceps brachii in that area. So let's go ahead and look at flexion of the forearm at the elbow joint. Insertion getting closer to origin. Okay, let's look at supination of the forearm. Here we go. You also are contracting. Is it some ginormous contraction? No, but in order to do that movement, yes, you will be contracting that a little bit more. Now let's look at flexion of the arm, shoulder joint. Again, you also see the contraction from the biceps brachii. Now let's go ahead and look at the triceps brachii. As you see, we're in a posterior view. This is going to be extension of the forearm at the elbow. Again, you see that contraction. Next up, look at extension of the arm at the shoulder joint. Again, hyperextension. You definitely see that contraction. So that's going to be helping us with the actions of the triceps brachii and also the biceps brachii. Move on to the last group of muscles. As you can see, we already went over the biceps brachii. We've seen the brachialis. We've seen the brachioradialis. I'll show you again here because it's just relevant. So we don't need to write both of them. So we're going to be focusing on the location of these muscles. And yes, there's a lot of them. They're tiny, right? But the way I kind of organize myself when it comes to this, and this is our last piece of the chest, shoulder girdle, and arm muscles. So the way you kind of want to focus on it is remembering your metacarpals, remembering that we start the numbering from 1 at the thumb, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 1, that's going to help you, okay? Number 2, looking at the names. Longus, brevis, long and short, right? Radialis, probably going to be near the radius. Ulnaris is going to be near the ulna. Carpi is a wrist, right? So we have all those details. Extensor digitorum, that's going to be, again, the digits. Since we're talking about the overall forearm, we're talking about the fingers, right? Little details like that. So if I'm looking at this, palmaris longus, let's think about that. The palm area. That's what you're probably thinking of there. You're like, okay, this has to be near the palm area. But because it's long, doesn't mean it has to be directly at the palm area. Maybe it can go towards the palm area. Okay, just little details from the names themselves. If you're looking at extensor, that means it's going to extend. Flexor is going to flex. Flexor, extension, two different things. Meaning, is it going to adduct or extend an adduct, or, of course, extend an abduct. So you have those options there as well. The names here is going to help you with these too. Okay, because there's a lot of little details. Let's go ahead and locate all of these on our visuals here. So we see the flexor carpi ulnaris right here. We got that one. We see the pronator teres. Pronator teres is right here. We got that one. Extensor carpi radialis longus right here. Got that one. Extensor carpi ulnaris. Okay, so remember we're talking about the extensor, not the flexor one. So the extensor carpi ulnaris here. And as you can see, we have two different views. Palms up, palms down. So you got to keep that in mind as well. Flexor carpi radialis. Flexor carpi radialis, right here. Extensor carpi radialis brevis. Extensor carpi radialis brevis, right here. Extensor digitorum, right here. Brachioradialis, should be down here, but I'll show another visual here. And the palmaris longus, okay? The palmaris longus is over here. So now we have the locations where everything is, because that's the whole goal here, the locations. Sometimes we need a little bit more information to help us understand the location. Number 1, again, being able to number your digits are going to help you basically remember what metacarpals we're focused on, okay? And that'll make it a little bit easier to remember some of these muscles. Like, as you can see, the palmaris longus extending to these 4 metacarpals of the hand, right? and we see the flexor carpi ulnaris, that means it's going to be right there where the wrist should be because we're talking about wrist, and it's on the ulna side. So the radius side, the ulna side here. One way you remember it is the radius is near the thumb and the ulna is by the pinky, right? You can also say that the radius is on the thumb area and the first metacarpal, and the ulnaris is going to be on around the fifth metacarpal. Okay, but some of them could be between 4 and 5 or 3 and 2. So let's get into those details. First, focus on the muscles that don't have like flexor, extensor, or any of that around it, like the pronator teres or the palmaris longus. Let's focus on those first. So let's look at the pronator teres. The pronator teres, as far as location, is going to be diagonal from the inner elbow to the mid radius. So we have our elbow here. We're saying it's going to be diagonal to it. You can see it's kind of diagonal. It's going to stop where the inner radius is. That's going to be our pronator teres. And as you can see, it's kind of deep. So we do have some pieces of the biceps brachii kind of above it. So you will need to be able to see it in a different visual where we take off more layers. Okay? Let me also get a better color here. And I'll get like, hopefully it's yellow. That's going to be the pronator teres. And you'll see the biceps brachii, the insertion area is going to be above that. All right. Oh, that's not the pronator. So that's going to be the pronator teres. Now let's go ahead and look into the palmaris longus. So I'm going to find my palmaris longus. Here we are. It's going to be this muscle here. And the palmaris longus is going to be toward the center, and it's going to go toward the center wrist / palm. So here my palmaris longus is going to be toward the center wrist. So it's kind of up between the wrists here, and it goes out to the palm here. Okay, so that's one way to kind of identify that it's really on the entire palm there. Now, the goal of this is to tense the palm up. So it's kind of a weak wrist flexor. Just keep that in mind about palmaris longus. Okay, because it can tense up the palm. Just look at all the actual connections we have here. All right, so we can get rid of that one, and that one, and we'll see visuals of this in the other app. Now let's go ahead and look at our flexors, but now I want to focus on either the digits or the actual wrist. If I'm going to focus on the wrist, I need to focus on the ulnar portion or the radius portion. So first, let's focus on the digit, like the extensor digitorum, like we see here. So again, you have to be able to go palm down to be able to feel the extensor digitorum. Yes, you should be able to feel that because it is, again, superficial. So if we number over here our digits 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, because again, we have pronation going on over here. Then we can focus on the extensor digitorum. It's going to be here. Okay. And as you can see, it focuses on different fingers. Really is going to focus on fingers 2 through 5. So the palmaris longus, and now the extensor digitorum, one is going to deal with the actual palm up, one is going to have connections with the palm being down, okay? And it's basically going to help you open your hand. So it's going to extend the fingers and wrists to help you open your hand. All right, folks, so just keep that one in mind when we're talking about the extensor digitorum. Now let's get into all the other ones, right? So first, let's do the flexors because, again, there's only 2 of them here that you have to learn. You have to learn the flexor carpi ulnaris and the flexor carpi radialis. So automatically, we know it's going to help with flexion. Flexion of the what? Flexion at the wrist on the ulnar side, flexion at the wrist on the radius side. So you can also say flexion at the wrist on the pinky side, flexion of the wrist at the thumb side. Whatever's going to help you remember that particular thing. So let's focus on the flexor carpi radialis, okay? And again, I have my flexor carpi radialis here. Okay. And again, that was kind of superficial, so it's not too bad to be able to feel. This is going to flex and abduct the wrist, so it moves towards the thumb. It's going to move towards the thumb, which means away from the midline, okay? How do I know it's moving towards the thumb? Because we're talking about the radialis, and the radius is going to be more on the thumb side. Okay, folks, so keep that in mind. Where's this located? Inner elbow. So we definitely are in the inner elbow here. It looks like to the base of the second and third metacarpals on the thumb side. So definitely can go to the base of our thumb with the second and third metacarpals here as well. Okay, folks. Now the extensor digitorum, I don't know if I said this, so let me make sure I have that in mind. Again, it's going to, I already told you it's going to go to the back of the forearm here. to fingers 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, I think I already said that. All right, so that's our flexor carpi radialis. Now let's go to our flexor carpi ulnaris. Before that, remember, just kind of focus on which side of the metacarpal is going to be on, the thumb side, the pinky side, or 1 and 5. Also focus on the fact that you're dealing with either the ulna or the radius. All right, flexor carpi ulnaris, again, it's going to flex and this time adduct. That means it's going to adduct the wrist towards the pinky this time. Okay, so it's going to go towards the midline. This area in the midline is going to go towards the midline. And as you can see, that's going to be the pinky side. So here is our flexor carpi ulnaris here. Here we go. And as you can see, it's at the base of the 5th metacarpal. So again, it's an inner elbow, but it's at the base of the 5th metacarpal. So now looking at my inner elbow here, again, my forearm, I'm like, okay, if I go towards my pinky, then that's going to be my, on the, sort of looks lateral as well, the flexor carpi ulnaris. Next to it is going to be the palmaris longus. Next to that is going to be the flexor carpi radialis. And as you can see, I'm getting closer to the radius. Okay, so that'll be one way to kind of remember those. And the whole goal is the ulnaris portion is going to flex and adduct, going towards the midline. The radialis flexor is going to be flexing and abduct, meaning going towards the thumb or away from the midline. Let's now get into our extensors here. So we have extensor carpi radialis, extensor carpi ulnaris, extensor carpi radialis brevis. So we have a couple of details. First, we know that ulnaris is going to be near an extensor, near the wrist. That's going to be from the ulna side. Extensor near the wrist, that's going to be from the radius side, and it's very long. Extensor from the wrist, that's going to be on the radius side, and it's very short. So again, I have my extensor carpi radialis longus here, and then I have my extensor carpi radialis brevis here, and then finally I have my extensor carpi ulnaris here, okay? So one has to do with the actual ulna, the other ones have to do with the radius, and then we got to talk about their shape. So let's go ahead and look at our extensor carpi radialis here. Again, this is going to be this little piece right here. And again, it's very long. As you can see, going up. And what is it going to do? It's going to go to on the lateral side of the forearm to what? The base of this 2nd metacarpal here, or your index finger. Okay? What's the whole goal of this? It's to extend. It's going to extend and abduct the wrist. That means it's going away from the midline on the thumb side. Okay, how do I know it's the thumb side? We're talking about something that's radialis. Okay, let's go ahead and get into the radialis brevis. Now we have to go to the palm down side over here to be able to fill this one. Palm down, we're going to have our extensor carpi radialis brevis here. Again, it is shorter. So keep that in mind, it's not as long. So when you're thinking of this, just say it's the lateral forearm here. It is on the lateral side here. But it's going to extend. I'm going to make sure I see. You can't see all the details because they're, again, you got to go into the layers. But it's going to extend to like the base of the 3rd metacarpal. So let me get a better color. It's going to extend to like the base of that 3rd metacarpal. So again, inner elbow, lateral forearm, to the base of the 3rd metacarpal, or you can say your middle finger. What is the goal of this? This is going to extend and do what? It's going to abduct the wrist as well. So it's going to extend and abduct the wrist, again, on that thumb side. Yes, we are palms down, but that means our thumb side is now going to be on the lateral side here. And again, it's going to abduct, which allows us to, again, extend away from the midline. Okay, so that's our extensor carpi radialis brevis, which is a short one, and we also have the long one. Okay, now let's get into our extensor carpi ulnaris. So we know we're going to be on the ulna side. That means we got to orient ourselves. Think of the pinky and then go down. That's where your ulna is going to be. Okay, so for this, it's going to be the back ulnar side to the base of the 5th metacarpal. So remember, we also were talking about the flexor carpi ulnaris, which is going to be at the base of the 5th metacarpal, and the same thing here. So you have our extensor right here going to the base of the pinky. There you go. And what's the whole purpose of this? Flex, and it's going to adduct our wrist. So it's going to move towards the pinky. And finally, we have the brachioradialis. Again, that's going to be based on attachments. So we have the brachial attachment, which is going to be our upper arm, but we also have the radialis attachment. And so again, you can definitely see that's going to be attached to that radius on this side as well. How do I know this is the radius? Well, I look at the thumb and I go down. I know I'm dealing with the radius side. So that's that brachioradialis. Now let's go ahead and get the visual with me. Again, I try my best to organize you as far as what digits is it focused on, or specifically is it at the base of what metacarpals. And then I organize about, okay, once I know what's base of the metacarpals is on, I can go downward to look for that particular muscle. Sometimes you might be thinking, I'm going to put my palm down, go to the pinky, and I'm going to go to the base of that pinky and pull up on that muscle there. If I pull up on a muscle, it's probably going to be the extensor carpi ulnaris, okay? Again, if I put my palm up, and again, I go to the base of that fifth metacarpal or my pinky, I lift up, I would probably see my flexor carpi ulnaris. You can do the same thing with the other ones that are extensors and, of course, radialis as well. But do the best you can to make yourself be able to visualize the location of these. Let's go ahead and see more. We have another anterior view of the forearm this time. And again, you can see our thumb going down to our pinky here. You can see the thumb over here and the cadaver. Now, I want to first focus on the brachioradialis because now with this view, we're able to see how long it is as well, going down into the radius. So this is a brachioradialis. Okay, this whole muscle here. Then let's go ahead and get into our palmaris longus. So our palmaris longus is here. Again, the palmaris longus does what? It's going to go towards the center of the wrist in the palm. And as you can see, that is going to the center of the wrist in the palm. That's another way you can think of palmaris longus. Now let's look at the pronator teres. Pronator teres, as we already said, is going to help turn the palm down. It's going to assist in elbow flexion. And as you can see, it definitely is a part of the inner elbow toward that radius. So it's kind of turned towards the radius, which we know is on the thumb side here. Here's a better view and the cadaver version. Do a posterior or palm down view in order to see other muscles like the extensor digitorum. So as you can see, the extensor digitorum on the cadaver and on this arm of the muscle here posteriorly, what is it going to be doing? Extending down the forearm to the actual, the back of the forearm here, to the fingers. And we said fingers 2 through 5, of course, but the whole goal of it is to help you open your hand. Definitely need to be able to help you open that hand. Okay, that's the whole purpose of the extensor digitorum. Now, again, we have extensor digitorum longus, and that's also focused on digits, but those digits are going to be your toes. That's going to be lower limb stuff. But for upper limb, we're talking about extensor digitorum, no additional thing. To show you here the extensor carpi ulnaris, again, is going to the base of that fifth metacarpal, which is going to be our pinky. That's one way to be able to visualize that. This is all in the palm down view. Next, I want to show you extensor carpi radialis longus. Again, we have that sort of palm up view or anterior view that we're dealing with. Now, here you can see it here. So again, it's on the radius, as we know. It's going to help to extend, okay? And what is it going to help to extend? Well, remember, it's going to help to basically extend and abduct the wrist on the thumb side. So we have that abduction here. That means it's going away from the midline. Now let's look at the extensor carpi radialis brevis. Also a smaller one. So here is the radialis longus. Lower right next to it is going to be the radialis brevis. Okay, folks? So the radialis brevis, again, is also going to extend and abduct the wrist on the thumb side, but it is smaller, and it's going to be at the lateral forearm to the base of that third metacarpal. You can even go into detail of that. Where the extensor carpi radialis longus is going to go to the base of the second metacarpal. So again, they're right next to one another. All right, we're back to, of course, the anterior view or the palm up. And let's go ahead and look at the flexor carpi radialis. Okay, here's our flexor carpi radialis, as you can see. And when it comes to this, again, it's going to flex and abduct the wrist and move towards the thumb. And again, it's going to be in our inner elbow, as you can see, down to the base of the second and third metacarpal here on the thumb side. All right, folks, so just keep that in mind as well. And I believe the last one we have is the flexor carpi ulnaris. I want to show you the flexor carpi ulnaris. Again, as you can see, with the palms up, it's going to be near the base of that pinky finger. We also saw, again, the extensor carpi ulnaris is going to be the base of the fifth metacarpal, or, of course, the pinky when the palm is down. All right, folks, so that's going to end this video. It's a lot because there's a lot of muscles to kind of figure out the location for. It's not perfect, but my goal for you is to at least be able to kind of try to group them together and visualize what they do based on the actual metacarpals of the hand, or where they are as far as their position to the wrist, or if they're at the base of a particular metacarpal, or if they're just right there by digits, or how they are going to actually extend or abduct or adduct the wrist, for example. So just keep those in mind, and hopefully this was helpful. See you in the next video.